The biker captain was seconds away from starting his engine when a 10-year-old motel owner's daughter came running. Breathless and terrified, she begged him not to start the bikes. He almost ignored her. Kids have wild imaginations. But when his mechanic checked beneath the fuel tank, his face went pale. What they found wasn't an accident. Sharp at 5:47 a.m., and when Ryan pulled on his riding gloves. Around him, 7 other bikes sat in a neat row outside the Dusty Pine Motel, their chrome parts catching the first hint of sunrise. The Phoenix Riders had exactly 13 minutes before their scheduled departure time. Late enough, and they'd lose precious points in the Southwest Endurance Challenge. "Dev, fuel check," Ryan called out to his lead mechanic, who was already crouched beside the third bike, running his hand along the tank. "All good, Captain," Dev replied, not looking up. His breath made small clouds in the morning chill. Ryan loved this moment. The quiet before the roar. The stillness before 2,000 miles of asphalt, wind, and speed. This was day 2 of a 5-day race across 3 states, and they were currently sitting in 4th place. Close enough to smell victory, far enough to taste desperation. "Hey, Ryan." Marco, their youngest rider, was already straddling his bike, bouncing with energy. "Think we can shave an hour off today's leg?" "We shave what we can without dying," Ryan said, but he smiled. Marco's enthusiasm was infectious, even at dawn. The motel behind them was the kind of place nobody chose on purpose, just the kind you ended up at when you needed 8 rooms and a parking lot big enough for a racing team. The owner, a quiet man named Frank, had been helpful enough. His daughter had even brought them extra coffee last night. Ryan thought of that now as he checked his GPS mount. Sweet kid, couldn't have been older than 10, with nervous eyes and a voice so soft you had to lean in to hear her. "Engines in 5, Ryan announced. The team began their final checks, gloves secure, helmets ready, radios tested. That's when Ryan saw her. The little girl was running, actually sprinting, across the parking lot from the motel office. Her oversized jacket flapped behind her like wings. Her face was flushed, not from the cold, but from something else, something that looked like fear. "Wait," the girl shouted. Her voice cracked. "Wait, please." The team turned. Marco laughed. "Forget to charge us for the Wi-Fi, kid." But Ryan didn't laugh. He'd been riding long enough to know panic when he saw it. The girl, Mia, Ryan remembered, stumbled to a stop in front of Ryan's bike, gasping for air. Her small hands grabbed the handlebar like she was trying to physically prevent them from leaving. "Don't start your bikes," Mia wheezed. "Please, don't start them." The parking lot went quiet. Even the desert wind seemed to pause. Dev straightened up slowly. "What did you say?" Mia's eyes were wide and wet. "Last night, I couldn't sleep, so I was reading in the office. It was really late, maybe 2 in the morning. I heard voices outside, near your bikes." Ryan crouched down to Mia's level. "What kind of voices?" "2 men. I looked through the window, but I couldn't see their faces. They had flashlights, the small kind, like pen lights. They were doing something under your bikes." Mia's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And I heard one of them say," he said, "once they start up, it's over." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marco laughed again, but it sounded forced this time. Kid's got an imagination. Probably just heard some truckers talking. But Dev was already moving. He dropped to his knees beside Marco's bike, the closest one, and pulled out his inspection light. Ryan watched as he traced the fuel line from tank to engine, his fingers moving with the precision of someone who'd spent 20 years keeping bikes alive. His hand stopped. Dev's voice had gone flat. "Come here." Now, he was beside him in 3 strides. Dev pointed his light at a section of the fuel line just below the tank. At first, Ryan saw nothing. Then he saw everything. The rubber fuel line had a clean slice through it, almost surgical in its precision. But it hadn't been left cut. Someone had carefully taped it back together with heat-resistant tape, matching the line's black color almost perfectly. In the dark, you'd never notice. Even in daylight, you'd have to know what you were looking for. "Holy," Ryan breathed. "It gets worse," Dev said. He gently tugged the tape. It peeled away easily, revealing the cut underneath. "This tape isn't meant to hold. It's meant to last just long enough. Once the engine starts, fuel pressure builds. Hot fuel sprays onto a hot engine block." He looked up at Ryan, his face pale. We'd have made it maybe 30 seconds before. Before what? Marco demanded, dismounting his bike. Dev stood slowly. Before your bike became a fireball with you on it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mia started crying quietly. I didn't know what they were doing. I just knew something was wrong. The way they were whispering. It scared me. Ryan felt ice slide down his spine. He put a hand on Mia's shoulder. You did good, sweetheart. You did real good. Check the others, Ryan ordered. Check every single bike. Now, the team scattered. Ryan watched as Dev moved methodically from bike to bike, his inspection lights sweeping like a tiny sun. Marco and two other riders pulled out their own tools, copying Dev's examination. For minutes later, Dev stood up from the last bike. His face told Ryan everything. 4 bikes compromised, he said. Same cut, same tape job, same result if we'd started them. Which 4? Ryan asked, though he already suspected. You, me, Jenna, and Marco. The 4 fastest riders. Dev's jaw tightened. This wasn't random. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Ryan felt rage building in his chest, hot and sharp. But he forced it down. Anger could wait. Right now, they needed to think. Get all the bikes into the garage, he said. I don't care if Frank minds. We're not leaving them exposed. Marco, call the local sheriff. Jenna, start documenting everything with photos. Close-ups of every cut. As the team sprang into action, Ryan knelt down beside Mia again. The girl had stopped crying, but looked terrified. Did you tell your dad? Ryan asked gently. Mia shook her head. He was asleep. I didn't want to wake him until I warned you first. I thought maybe I was being silly. You weren't silly. You saved our lives. Ryan unzipped his riding jacket and unpinned the Phoenix Rider's patch from the chest, a silver bird rising from flames. He pressed it into Mia's small palm. This is yours now. You're part of the team. Mia stared at the patch, then at Ryan, then burst into fresh tears, but different ones this time. Behind them, Dev was already wheeling bikes toward the motel side garage. The sun was climbing higher now, painting the desert gold and red. Their race was delayed. Their bikes were sabotaged, and somewhere out there, someone had just tried to kill them. The Phoenix Riders weren't going anywhere yet. But when they did, Ryan promised himself they'd find out who did this. And why? Frank's garage smelled like motor oil and old concrete. It wasn't much, a single bay with flickering fluorescent lights and tools that looked older than Ryan. But it had a roof and a door that locked. That was enough. All 8 bikes stood in a line like patients in an emergency room. Dev had his toolkit spread across a workbench, sorting through wrenches and diagnostic equipment with the focus of a surgeon preparing for operation. Talk to me, Dev, Ryan said, leaning against the doorframe. Outside, he could hear Marco arguing with someone on the phone, probably the sheriff's office. Dev didn't look up from the fuel line he was examining under a magnifying lamp. Whoever did this new bikes. These aren't amateur cuts. Look, he held up a severed section of rubber tubing. Clean edge. No tearing, no sawing marks. They used a precision blade, probably a tube cutter or a sharp utility knife with a fresh blade. Jenna, their second best rider and the team's unofficial photographer, was crouched beside another bike, her camera clicking steadily. Why tape them back together? She asked. Why not just cut them and leave? Because they wanted it to look normal during pre-ride inspection, Dev explained. The tape holds just enough that you wouldn't see fuel dripping. Wouldn't smell it either, not immediately. But the second you start the engine and fuel pressure kicks in, he made an explosive gesture with his hands. Ryan felt his stomach twist. He'd been riding for 15 years. He'd crashed, skidded, been thrown from bikes at 60 miles per hour. But this was different. This was cold, calculated. When did they do it? He asked. Dev pointed to a small puddle of fuel beneath one of the compromised bikes. Fuel's been seeping for hours, but the puddle's still small. I'd say they made the cuts sometime between 1 and 4 this morning. Any earlier, and we'd have noticed bigger leaks. Any later, and they'd have risked being seen at sunrise. The garage door creaked open. Marco stepped in, his face flushed with frustration. Sheriff's not coming. What? Ryan's voice was sharp. Says we're part of an unsanctioned racing event, and he's not wasting county resources on biker drama. Marco made air quotes with his fingers, his jaw tight. I told him someone tried to kill us. He said if we have evidence, we can file a report at the station. Basically told us to handle our own problems. Ryan closed his eyes and counted to 5. They were outsiders in a small desert town, part of a race that operated in legal gray areas across state lines. To locals, they were probably just troublemakers passing through. Fine, he said. We do this ourselves. Frank appeared in the doorway, Mia peeking out from behind his leg. The motel owner looked apologetic. I'm real sorry about the sheriff. He's not helpful with outsiders. It's not your fault, Ryan assured him. Then he looked down at Mia. Sweetheart, you said you heard 2 men. Can you remember anything else? Anything at all? Mia chewed her lip, thinking hard. One of them had a deep voice. The other one laughed a lot, kind of high and nervous. And she paused. One of them said something weird. He said, make sure it's the right 4. Boss wants the fast ones slowed down permanent. The garage went dead silent. The fast ones, Ryan repeated slowly. Dev, which bikes were sabotaged again? Yours, mine, Jenna's, and Marco's. The 4 of us who are currently in the top 20 individual rankings, Ryan said, his mind racing. Someone did research. Someone knows who we are. Jenna lowered her camera. This wasn't random vandalism. This was targeted. Which means, Dev added grimly, someone wants us out of this race. Permanently. Marco slammed his fist against the wall. Let me guess. Our friends from Apex Drifters. They're staying at the Pine View Motel 15 miles down the highway. Some of their crew was hanging around the parking lot last night. I saw them when I went out for a smoke around 11-inch. Ryan's mind sharpened. The Apex Drifters. Their biggest rivals. The team that had beaten them by 12 minutes last year. The team currently sitting in 2nd place, just 30 minutes ahead of Phoenix. We can't prove it was them, Ryan said carefully. Not yet. But we can ask questions, Jenna said, standing up. The race has a checkpoint rest stop in 2 hours. Apex will be there. We'll be there, Ryan corrected. First, we fix what we can. Dev, how long to replace the fuel lines? Dev was already pulling replacement tubing from his emergency kit. 40 minutes if everyone helps. These 4 bikes will be safe. But Ryan, we're losing time. Every minute here is a minute further behind. I don't care about time right now, Ryan said quietly. I care about staying alive long enough to finish. He walked over to Mia and knelt down again. The girl was clutching the Phoenix patch tightly in her small fist. Thank you, Mia, Ryan said softly. You're braver than most adults I know. Mia's eyes welled up. Are you going to be okay? Because of you? Yes. Ryan stood and looked at his team. Tired, angry, but unbroken. Let's get these bikes fixed. Then let's go find out who wants us dead. The rest stop appeared like a mirage in the desert heat. A cluster of picnic tables, vending machines, and portable toilets beside a cracked parking lot. 2 hours behind schedule, the Phoenix riders pulled in to find exactly what Ryan expected, the Apex Drifters, lounging in the shade like they owned the place. There were 6 of them, 4 riders and 2 pit crew members. Their bikes gleamed with sponsorship decals and expensive modifications. Their leader, a man named Crane with a salt and pepper beard and mirrored sunglasses, sat on a picnic table eating a sandwich like he had all the time in the world. Because he did. Phoenix was supposed to be ahead of them by now. Ryan killed his engine and removed his helmet slowly, letting his short dark hair catch the sunlight. Beside him, Dev and the others dismounted in silence. The air between the 2 teams was thick with unspoken tension. Well, Crane called out, his voice dripping with amusement. Phoenix riders. Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be hours ahead by now. He took another bite of his sandwich. Trouble this morning? Ryan walked toward him with deliberate calm. Every instinct screamed at him to grab Crane by the collar, but he kept his hands relaxed at his sides. You could say that. Bike problems. Crane's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's rough. Machines can be so unpredictable. Funny thing, Ryan said, stopping a few feet away. Our bikes were perfectly fine last night. Then this morning, we discovered someone had been tampering with them. Very professional work. The kind that takes knowledge and planning. Crane's expression didn't change, but one of his pit crew members, a thin man with grease-stained hands, shifted his weight nervously. Tampering. Crane removed his sunglasses and cleaned them on his shirt. That's a serious accusation. You got proof. We're working on it, Ryan replied evenly. Just thought it was interesting that some of your crew was spotted at our motel last night. Public motel, public parking lot, Crane said, standing up now. He was roughly the same height as Ryan, and he used it, stepping closer to meet him eye to eye. My guys can stay wherever they want. And if you're implying something, maybe you should talk to the sheriff instead of wasting my time. Marco stepped forward, fists clenched. We did talk to the sheriff. He wasn't interested. Convenient, right? Crane's smile widened. Small-town sheriffs. What can you do? He glanced at his team, then back at Ryan. Look, I'm sorry about your bike troubles. Really, but races are dangerous. Equipment fails. Maybe your mechanic isn't as good as you think. His eyes flicked to Dev. Maybe you should consider retiring before someone gets hurt. The threat was barely veiled. Dev's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he walked past Crane toward the Apex bikes, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning casually like a tourist admiring the scenery. Nice rides, Dev called out. New modifications since last season. One of Apex's pit crew, a stocky man with a red bandana, moved to block Dev's path. Don't touch anything. Wasn't planning to, Dev said mildly. But Ryan saw his eyes tracking something. His gaze had locked onto the man's belt, where several tools hung in leather loops. Dev turned back to Ryan and gave the smallest nod. He understood immediately. We should get going, Ryan announced, his voice light and casual. Long road ahead. Good luck out there, Crane. Hope your engines don't give you any trouble. He paused deliberately. Would hate for something to catch fire. Crane's smile finally faltered. Just for a second. Just enough. As Phoenix riders mounted their bikes, Jenna sidled up to Ryan. Did you see Dev's face? He found something. I know, Ryan murmured. Stay sharp. We'll talk when we're clear. They rode for 20 minutes before pulling off onto a service road, hidden from the main highway by a ridge of red rock. The moment they stopped, Dev pulled off his helmet. The guy with the bandana, Dev said without preamble. He had a professional tube cutter on his belt. Not the cheap kind you get at hardware stores, the surgical kind. Diamond blade. Same type that would make cuts like the ones on our fuel lines. Could be coincidence, Jenna said, though she didn't sound convinced. Could be, Dev agreed. But it's the same brand, Klein Tools, professional grade. I saw the logo. That specific cutter costs $200. Not standard pit crew equipment. Marco slammed his palm against his handlebar. So Apex did it. We should go back there and what? Ryan interrupted. Beat a confession out of them. We need real proof, not just suspicion. Then what do we do? Marco demanded. Ryan stared at the horizon, thinking. The race continued. Every hour they spent investigating was an hour they fell further behind. But if they kept racing blind, who's to say the saboteurs wouldn't strike again? We finished today's leg, Ryan decided. We stay visible and predictable. But tonight, at the checkpoint garage, we set a trap. What kind of trap? Jenna asked. Ryan's smile was cold and sharp. The kind that catches rats in the act. The official race checkpoint garage sat on the outskirts of a town called Redstone, a concrete building with security cameras and a chain-link fence. It was supposed to be safe. Neutral ground where teams could rest, repair, and refuel under the watchful eyes of race officials. Ryan had never trusted it less. They arrived at 7:34 p.m., just as the desert sun melted into orange and purple. The Phoenix riders pulled into their assigned bay, exhausted from pushing hard all afternoon to make up lost time. They'd climbed from 4th to 3rd place, but it had cost them. Marco's hands were cramping. Jenna's shoulder was stiff from fighting crosswinds. And Ryan's head pounded from hours of hypervigilance, scanning every shadow for threats. Lock the bikes, Ryan ordered as soon as they dismounted. Nobody touches them without someone watching. Dev was already setting up a portable cable system, threading it through the wheel spokes and frame of each bike. I'll take first watch, he said. Get some food. I'm not hungry. But Ryan had other plans first. He found the race officials in the garage office, a cramped room with clipboards and coffee-stained maps. A woman named Patricia, the regional coordinator, looked up from her laptop with barely concealed annoyance. Phoenix riders. You're behind schedule. We had mechanical issues, Ryan said carefully. Issues that weren't accidental. Patricia's expression didn't change. Every team has mechanical issues. Not like this. Ryan pulled out his phone and opened the photos Jenna had taken that morning. Someone sabotaged our fuel lines. Professional cuts, deliberately concealed. We have evidence. Patricia squinted at the screen, then shrugged. Those just look like worn fuel lines to me. Could have cracked from road vibration. Ryan's patience snapped. 4 lines don't crack identically in one night. This was deliberate attempted. Listen, Patricia interrupted, leaning back in her chair. This is an endurance race. Bikes break. Parts fail. If you want to file a formal complaint, there's paperwork. Takes 3 to 5 business days to process. Otherwise, I suggest you focus on racing. It was a dismissal, clear and final. Ryan wanted to argue, to demand justice, but he could see the wall in Patricia's eyes. Officials didn't want drama. Drama meant investigations, delays, bad publicity. Easier to label it as paranoid racers and move on. Fine, Ryan said coldly. Can we at least request the security footage from the Dusty Pine Motel? Your organization has partnerships with local businesses for race monitoring. Patricia sighed like Ryan had asked her to climb Everest. I'll make a request. Check back tomorrow. When Ryan returned to the garage bay, Dev was crouched beside his bike, his face twisted in confusion. What's wrong? Ryan asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach. Dev held up a section of fuel line, the one from Ryan's bike that morning. Look at this. Ryan knelt beside him. The fuel line looked new, clean, no cuts, no tape residue, just fresh black rubber. That's impossible, he breathed. We documented everything. The cuts were there. I know, Dev said urgently. I labeled each compromised line and bagged them separately in my toolkit. But when I just opened the bag to show Patricia if she came by, he held up the line again. This isn't the same one. Someone switched them. Jenna appeared, her camera in hand. I've got photos. We can prove. She stopped, tapping frantically through her camera screen. Her face went pale. The photos, the close-ups of the cuts. They're gone. What do you mean, gone? Marco demanded. Deleted. All of them. But I didn't delete them. I never delete until I back up. Her hands were shaking. Someone accessed my camera. But when? I've had it with me all day except that the rest stop, Ryan finished grimly. When we confronted Apex. The pieces clicked together like a nightmare puzzle. While they'd been distracted talking to Crane, someone had gotten to Jenna's camera bag. And sometime between the motel and here, someone had accessed Dev's toolkit. The rest stop, Dev said slowly. When I went to the bathroom, I left my toolkit near the bikes for maybe 5 minutes. I thought Marco was watching. I was getting water, Marco said defensively. It was 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's all it had taken. They're erasing evidence, Ryan said, his voice hollow. This isn't just about winning a race. This is organized. They have access, resources, maybe even people inside the race organization. Jenna sank onto a workbench. So what do? We have no proof now. No cuts, no photos, no evidence. Ryan stood up, his mind racing. They'd been outmaneuvered at every turn. The sabotage, the dismissive sheriff, the vanished evidence. Whoever was behind this had planned 3 steps ahead. But they'd made one mistake. Mia, Ryan said suddenly. They don't know about Mia. She's a witness they don't know exists. A 10-year-old kid's testimony? Marco scoffed. Against professional saboteurs? That won't hold up. Maybe not in court, Ryan agreed. But it might be enough for something else. He looked at each of his team members. We're going back to the motel. Back. Dev blinked. Ryan, we'll lose our position. We'll drop to 6th, maybe 7th. I don't care about position anymore, Ryan interrupted. I care about catching whoever did this. We go back tonight. We set up surveillance. And this time, we get evidence they can't erase. The Dusty Pine Motel looked different at night. Shadows pooled in strange places. The neon vacancy sign buzzed and flickered, casting everything in sickly pink light. To Ryan, it felt like returning to a crime scene, which, technically, they were. It was 11:47 p.m., and when they pulled into the parking lot with headlights off, engines barely purring. The plan was risky, maybe insane. Half the team, Jenna and 2 other riders, had continued toward the next checkpoint to maintain appearances. If anyone was tracking their progress, it would look like Phoenix was still racing. But Ryan, Dev, Marco, and one rider named Luis had circled back on rural roads, adding 3 hours to their journey. 3 hours further behind. 3 hours that might cost them everything. Frank met them at the motel office door, Mia peering around his waist in pajamas covered with stars. "You came back," Frank said, surprise evident in his voice. "Thought you'd be halfway to New Mexico by now." "Change of plans," Ryan said. "Frank, we need your help. And Mia's, if she's willing." Inside the cramped office, Ryan laid out the situation. The erased evidence. The dead ends. The certainty that whoever sabotaged them would try again, either to finish what they started or to cover their tracks. "You think they'll come back here?" Frank asked, skeptical. "I think they can't help themselves," Dev said, spreading a hand-drawn map of the motel across the desk. "They switched the fuel lines and erased our photos, but they can't know if we kept other evidence. There's a chance they'll return to make absolutely sure there's nothing left to find." "That's a big assumption," Frank pointed out. "It's all we have," Ryan admitted. Mia tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, I want to help." "Absolutely not," Frank said immediately. "This is dangerous. These people already tried to." "I'm the only one who saw their faces," Mia interrupted, her small voice surprisingly firm. "Well, kind of. I saw shapes. One was tall and thin. The other was shorter and walked funny, like he had a limp." Ryan knelt down. "A limp? You didn't mention that before." "I forgot. I was scared." Mia's eyes were wide but determined. "But I remember now. And I heard their voices. If I heard them again, I'd know." Frank looked torn between pride and terror. "Sarah, my wife, she'd kill me if she knew I was considering this." "She doesn't have to know," Ryan said gently. "Mia stays inside the office. Door's locked. She's just here to identify if she hears or sees anything. We do the dangerous part." After a long moment, Frank nodded reluctantly. "One condition. First sign of real trouble, you call the sheriff. I don't care if he's useless. I want it on record." "Deal," Ryan agreed. The next hour was spent preparing. They moved their bikes to the back of the motel, out of sight from the road. In their place, Dev set up 2 bait bikes, older models from Frank's storage shed, dressed up with Phoenix Riders decals to look legitimate in the dark. Luis rigged up 2 small cameras with night vision, the kind hunters used for wildlife, hidden in the eaves above the parking lot. The footage fed wirelessly to a tablet Marco monitored from inside Frank's office. Dev and Ryan took positions behind the motel's workshop, concealed by a stack of old pallets and a broken-down truck. From there, they had a clear view of the parking lot and the bait bikes. "This is crazy," Dev whispered, checking his watch. 1:23 a.m. We could be sitting here all night for nothing." "Then we sit," Ryan said simply. The desert night was surprisingly loud. Crickets chirped. Wind rattled loose signs. A distant coyote howled. Every sound made Ryan's heart jump, his hand instinctively reaching for the tire iron he'd tucked into his belt. At 2:14 a.m., Ryan's radio crackled softly. Marco's voice, barely audible. "Movement. North side. 2 figures approaching on foot." Ryan and Dev pressed themselves flatter against the pallets. Through the gaps in the wood, Ryan could see 2 silhouettes moving across the parking lot. They walked carefully, deliberately, checking over their shoulders every few steps. One tall and thin, one shorter with an uneven gait. Inside the office, Mia was pressed against the window, her small hand giving a thumbs up. She recognized them. The 2 figures reached the bait bikes. The taller one knelt down, pulling something from a backpack, tools glinting in the weak light. The shorter one stood watch, his head swiveling nervously. "They're going for the fuel lines again," Dev breathed. "Same playbook." Ryan keyed his radio. "Marco, you getting this on camera?" "Crystal clear. Every second." "Luis, circle around the back exit. Don't let them run toward the highway." "Copy." Ryan watched as the tall saboteur worked under the bike, his movements practiced and efficient. This wasn't his first time, maybe not even his 10th. "Now," Dev whispered urgently. "Not yet," Ryan said. "Let him finish. We need them caught in the act, tools in hand, undeniable." The seconds crawled by like hours. The tall man replaced something under the bike, probably swapping in another sabotage fuel line to replace whatever evidence he thought they'd left. Finally, he stood up, brushing off his knees. "Now," Ryan said. He and Dev burst from their hiding spot, flashlights blazing. Don't move. The shorter man yelped and bolted immediately, limping but fast, heading for the back of the motel. The tall one hesitated for just a second, and that was his mistake. Dev tackled him before he could run, both men crashing into the gravel. Tools scattered everywhere, clattering like metal rain. In the distance, Ryan heard Luis shout, "I got the other one." No, wait. Then the sound of running footsteps fading into darkness. One escaped. But one was enough. The tall man thrashed like a trapped animal, kicking gravel and cursing as Dev pressed him face down into the parking lot. Ryan rushed over, using zip ties from his gear bag to secure his wrists behind his back. "Get off me," the man snarled. "You can't do this. This is assault." "Funny," Ryan said, pulling the zip tie tight. "I was going to say the same thing about cutting fuel lines on bikes traveling 80 miles per hour. The man went still. Marco and Frank burst out of the office, Frank carrying a baseball bat like he actually knew how to use it. "Everyone okay?" "We're good," Dev panted, standing up and dusting off his jeans. "One got away, but we've got this one." Ryan pulled the man to his feet. He was younger than Ryan expected, mid-20s, with a thin face and darting eyes. He wore all black, including a lightweight jacket with no identifying marks. Professional work clothes for someone who didn't want to be remembered. "Luis," Ryan called into his radio. "Report." Static crackled, then Luis's frustrated voice. "Lost him." He knew the terrain. Cut through some wash behind the motel. "I couldn't keep up in the dark." "Sorry, Captain." "It's okay. Come back." Ryan turned his attention to their captive, shining his flashlight directly in his face. He squinted and turned away. "What's your name?" Silence. "Let me rephrase," Ryan said coldly. "We have you on camera tampering with our bikes. We have tools with your fingerprints. We have a witness who saw you here last night doing the same thing. You're already caught. Cooperating might be the only smart move you make tonight." The man's jaw tightened. "I want a lawyer." "This isn't a police station," Dev said. "You want a lawyer? We can call the sheriff. He'll arrest you for attempted murder, criminal sabotage, maybe even terrorism, since this crosses state lines during a sanctioned event." Or, Dev crouched down to eye level. "You can tell us who hired you, and maybe we work something out." The man's eyes flickered with uncertainty. He was scared. "Good." Marco returned from the road, holding up something small that glinted in the flashlight beam. "Found this near where the other guy ran. Dropped it, I guess." It was a phone. Not a smartphone, a cheap burner with a cracked screen. Ryan took it carefully, pressing the power button. The screen lit up, no password protection. "Amateur hour." He scrolled through the messages, his heart hammering as the pieces fell into place. Most messages were coded, short, cryptic phrases about deliveries and packages, but one thread was refreshingly clear. "Unknown number. Job's done. Both nights. Phoenix won't make it past day 3". Response: "Better not. Already paid half. You get the rest when they're out of the race. Permanently. Unknown number. What if they figure it out?" Response: "They won't. And if they do, they can't prove anything. Evidence is handled." The timestamp was from this afternoon, hours after the fuel line switch and photo deletion. Ryan held the phone up to the captive's face. "Want to explain this?" The man's face drained of color. "That's not mine. It was in your partner's pocket," Marco said. "Try again." "Look," the man said, his voice cracking. "I'm just a freelance mechanic, okay? I work pit crews, do repairs, whatever pays. A guy contacted me 3 days ago, offered $5,000 to slow down some racers. Said it was just business, competitive stuff. I didn't know it was going to be this serious." $5,000 to commit attempted murder sounds pretty serious, Ryan said icily. "It wasn't supposed to be murder." The words burst out desperately. He said just mess with their bikes enough to cause delays. Mechanical failures. I thought maybe I'd loosen some bolts, disconnect a sensor. I didn't know about the fuel lines until he explained exactly what he wanted. By then, he'd already paid half up front, and he said if I backed out. "If you backed out what?" Dev pressed. The man swallowed hard. He said I'd regret it. Showed me photos of my apartment. My girlfriend. He knew where I lived. A chill ran down Ryan's spine. This was bigger than he'd thought. More organized. More dangerous. "Who hired you?" he demanded. "Name?" "I don't know his real name. I swear." Everything was through encrypted messages and dead drops for payment. But he hesitated, then seemed to decide cooperation was his only option. The phone. Check the payment app. He sent money through there. Might have a name attached. Marco grabbed the burner phone from Ryan and navigated to a payment app. His eyes widened. Holy hell. The payments came from an account registered to. He looked up, meeting Ryan's gaze. Chad Vickers. That's Apex Drifters pit chief. The parking lot went silent except for the buzz of the neon sign. Apex. Just like they'd suspected. But now they had proof. Frank, Ryan said quietly. Call the sheriff. Tell him we've detained someone in the act of committing a crime. Tell him we have evidence of conspiracy, sabotage, and attempted murder. Frank nodded and headed inside. The young mechanic slumped in defeat. I'm so screwed. Yes, Ryan agreed. You are. But if you testify against whoever hired you, maybe, you walk away from this without spending the next decade in prison. Dev pulled out his phone. I'm calling race headquarters. Patricia needs to know about this. Tonight. As Dev dialed, Ryan looked at the evidence scattered around them. The tools, the phone, the confession, the camera footage. Finally, they had something concrete. Something that couldn't be erased or explained away. In the office window, Mia watched with wide eyes, still clutching the Phoenix Riders patch. Ryan gave her a thumbs up. They'd caught the rat. Now they just had to prove who sent him. The Southwest Endurance Challenge headquarters occupied a converted warehouse in Alamogordo, New Mexico. Ryan had never been inside. Most racers only saw checkpoint stations and finish lines. But at 9:17 a.m., exhausted and running on nothing but adrenaline and truck stop coffee, he walked through those doors with his team, one detained saboteur, and enough evidence to end careers. The lobby was sparse, folding tables, racing posters, and a receptionist who looked genuinely shocked to see them. Phoenix Riders? The woman stammered. You're supposed to be racing. I know, Ryan interrupted. We need to speak with the race director. Now. It's urgent. 10 minutes later, they were crammed into a conference room with 3 officials. Patricia, the regional coordinator from last night, Marcus Webb, the race director, and a severe-looking woman named Laura Chun, who was apparently the organization's legal counsel. The young mechanic, who'd finally identified himself as Tyler Brennan, sat handcuffed to a chair, flanked by 2 local police officers the sheriff had begrudgingly sent after Frank's 3rd phone call. Marcus Webb, a man in his 60s with silver hair and reading glasses, looked at the tablet Marco had placed in front of him. Security footage played on loop, clear night vision shots of Tyler tampering with the bait bikes, tools in hand, every movement documented. This was taken at your motel last night, Marcus asked. Correct, Ryan confirmed. After we returned specifically to catch whoever sabotaged us the first time. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. You left the race course. That's against regulations. People tried to kill us. Dev interrupted flatly. Regulations seemed less important than staying alive. Laura Chun, the lawyer, leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, you've been read your rights. Do you confirm that you were hired to sabotage the Phoenix Riders motorcycles? Tyler nodded miserably. Yes, ma'am. And do you confirm receiving payment from an account registered to Chad Vickers? I didn't know who Chad Vickers was until last night, Tyler said quickly. The guy who contacted me never said his name. But yeah, the money came from that account. $3,000 up front, supposed to get $2,000 more when Phoenix was eliminated from the race. Marcus removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Chad Vickers is the pit chief for Apex Drifters. Are you saying Apex Drifters orchestrated this? We're saying Chad Vickers did, Ryan clarified. Whether the team knew is a different question. A question we need answered, Laura said sharply. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling Apex's team captain right now. They're currently at the Day 2 checkpoint in Roswell. I want them here within the hour. The next 40 minutes were tense. Tyler was escorted to a holding area. The Phoenix Riders gave official statements to police. Dev provided the burner phone, now sealed in an evidence bag, with all its incriminating messages. Ryan felt hollowed out. They'd caught Tyler. They had proof of payment from Chad Vickers. But the reality was sinking in. They'd lost nearly 18 hours of race time. They'd dropped from 3rd place to 9th. Their chance at winning was effectively gone. Marco must have sensed his thoughts. We did the right thing. I know, Ryan said quietly. Doesn't make it hurt less. At 10:52 a.m., Apex Drifters arrived. Crane walked in first, his swagger noticeably absent. Behind him came 3 riders, and, finally, Chad Vickers, a stocky man in his 40s with a shaved head and a Bluetooth earpiece he didn't bother removing. Marcus didn't waste time with pleasantries. Mr. Vickers, we have evidence that links you to the sabotage of Phoenix Riders motorcycles. Specifically, payment records showing you hired Tyler Brennan to tamper with their fuel lines. Chad's face remained impassive. That's absurd. Is it? Laura pushed the tablet across the table, showing the payment app screenshots. This account is registered in your name. Social security number matches. These transactions occurred 3 days ago and yesterday afternoon. For the first time, Chad's expression cracked. His eyes darted to Crane, then back to the tablet. That account was compromised. Someone must have. Stop, Crane said suddenly. His voice was heavy, defeated. He turned to Chad. Just stop. Chad stared at him. Crane. I didn't know. Crane said, looking directly at Marcus. I swear to God, I didn't know until this moment. But I'm not going to let my team go down protecting you. He turned to Chad with something like disgust. What did you do? The room held its breath. Chad's shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. Phoenix was beating us. Not just at this race, at everything. Sponsors were talking about dropping us, picking them up instead. I thought, if they had mechanical problems, just enough to slow them down, make them look unreliable. He shook his head. It wasn't supposed to be dangerous. I told Tyler to make it subtle. You told him to cut fuel lines, Dev said, his voice shaking with rage. On bikes traveling at highway speeds. What did you think would happen? Chad said nothing. Marcus stood up slowly. Chad Vickers, you're fired from this organization, effective immediately. You're banned from all sanctioned racing events for life. Apex Drifters, unless you can prove the team had no knowledge of this sabotage, you're disqualified from this race and suspended pending investigation. Crane closed his eyes. We didn't know, but we'll accept disqualification. It's the right call. As police officers moved to escort Chad out, he'd be formally arrested later. Ryan finally spoke. Why? He asked Chad. We're all riders. We respect the sport. Why would you try to destroy that? Chad looked at him with hollow eyes. Because I forgot what respect meant. I only remembered winning. Then he was gone. 2 days later, the Phoenix Riders crossed the finish line in Tucson, Arizona as the sun painted the desert gold and crimson. They placed second overall. Under normal circumstances, second place would have felt like failure, so close to victory they could taste it. But as Ryan killed his engine and removed his helmet, all he felt was pride. They'd lost 18 hours to sabotage and investigation. They dropped to 9th place. And yet, through sheer determination and relentless riding, they'd clawed their way back up to second. More importantly, they'd finished alive. The crowd at the finish line was larger than usual. Word had spread about the sabotage, the midnight stakeout, the dramatic confrontation at race headquarters. What should have been a quiet endurance race had become a story about integrity, courage, and a 10-year-old girl who'd saved lives. Marcus Webb stood at the podium with a microphone, waiting as the final teams trickled in. When all riders were assembled, he cleared his throat. This year's Southwest Endurance Challenge will be remembered for reasons beyond racing, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the crowd. It will be remembered for what happened when the spirit of competition was corrupted by sabotage, and how one team refused to let that corruption stand. Ryan glanced at his team. Dev's hands were still bandaged from late-night repairs. Marco had dark circles under his eyes from 72 hours of minimal sleep. Jenna's shoulder was wrapped. She'd pushed through pain for 2 straight days. The Phoenix Riders, Marcus continued, lost nearly a full day of race time pursuing justice. They could have stayed silent, accepted their losses, and focused on racing. Instead, they chose to protect not just themselves, but the integrity of this sport. For that, they have our deepest respect. Applause rippled through the crowd. Additionally, Marcus said, I want to acknowledge someone who isn't a racer, but who showed more courage than most adults ever will. A silver minivan pulled up to the edge of the crowd. Frank stepped out, and beside him, dressed in a brand new jacket that was slightly too big, was Mia. Ryan's throat tightened. Mia walked toward the podium, her steps small and uncertain, clutching Frank's hand. When she reached the front, Marcus knelt down to her level. "Mia," he said gently, "without your warning, 4 riders would likely have been seriously injured or killed. You saw something wrong, and despite being scared, you spoke up. That's the definition of bravery." He held out a medal, not the standard race medal, but a special one, gold, with an engraving of a phoenix rising from flames, and the words "Honorary Phoenix Rider" inscribed below. Mia's eyes went wide as Marcus placed it around her neck. "You're part of the team now," Marcus said. "Official and permanent." The crowd erupted in cheers. Mia looked overwhelmed, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling, the biggest smile Ryan had ever seen. Ryan stepped forward and knelt beside Mia, just as he had in the motel parking lot 3 days ago. "Thank you," he said softly. "You saved our lives. All of us." Mia threw her arms around Ryan's neck, hugging him tightly. "I was so scared you wouldn't believe me." "I'll always believe you," Ryan promised. "Always." Frank wiped his own eyes, trying to maintain composure and failing completely. After the official ceremony concluded, the Phoenix Riders gathered their trophies, 2nd place overall, but first in the hearts of everyone who knew the full story. Sponsors who'd been considering dropping them were now flooding them with offers. The team's social media had exploded with support. But none of that mattered as much as what happened next. Ryan pulled out a folder he'd been carrying all day. Inside was a contract, simple but official. He handed it to Frank. "What's this?" he asked, scanning the pages. "An offer," Ryan said. "We need a home base between races. Somewhere secure where we can train, store equipment, and know our bikes are safe. The Dusty Pine Motel is perfect. We'd pay rent for the garage space, plus hire you as our official logistics coordinator. And Mia," he looked down at the girl, "would be our official team mascot and lucky charm. If she wants the job." Mia's jaw dropped. "Really? Really?" Dev confirmed, grinning. "Every team needs someone brave enough to tell them when they're about to do something stupid. That's you." Frank read through the contract, emotions playing across his face. "Sarah's going to think I'm crazy." "Probably," Ryan agreed. "But tell her we don't forget the people who save us. And we protect our own." Frank extended his hand. "Then we have a deal." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the finish line, Ryan looked at his team, bruised, exhausted, but unbroken. They'd been sabotaged, dismissed by authorities, and nearly killed. But they'd survived by trusting each other and refusing to back down. Mia stood among them now, the Phoenix patch still clutched in one hand, her new medal gleaming around her neck. "Next year," Ryan said, kneeling down one more time. "We're going to wave the flag at our starting line. I promised you that. And Phoenix Riders keep their promises." Mia nodded solemnly. "And I'll make sure nobody messes with your bikes." "I know you will," Ryan said, ruffling her hair. "I know you will." They loaded up their bikes as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Tomorrow they'd return to the Dusty Pine Motel, not as strangers passing through, but as a team coming home. And this time, every fuel line would be checked. Twice.